Hello everyone. Today I'd like to do a happy video on a wonderful subject that's one of my very favorites, and that is African violets. As you can see in the back here, I have two lovely African violets that are very healthy, and I've had them for over 10 years. And I know that a lot of people are very skeptical about buying African violets because they think they're hard to grow, but they're really not hard to grow. With these tips of do's and don'ts, you should be assured success. And I want you to go out and buy yourself an African violet and try it. Now you will need to make sure that you don't keep your home below 60 degrees. So if your home is very cold and you've turned it down to 50 degrees at night, then that's a no. I turn my heat down to 60 at night and they're fine. It's about 70 during the day, 60 at night. They're a tropical plant, so unless you live in the tropics, they should be an indoor plant, not an outdoor plant. They like humidity. Because they're a tropical plant, they love humidity. That does not mean that you need to have your house soaking wet with lots of vaporizers and whatnot. What I do is I have a hot air humidifier, and I don't even have a gauge to gauge it. I simply do the tests that everyone else does. When you take your clothes off, I usually wear 2 double layers, or sometimes a sweater, and when I take my sweater off, or I take one layer off and I hear that crackle from the static electricity, I know that my home is too dry. As long as I don't have that, I know that my hot air humidifier is working perfectly, and that's great for your respiratory system and for your houseplants. So you need a temperate climate, not below 60, and enough humidity to keep them healthy. You also need to keep them in somewhat of indirect sunlight. They will not do good in the shade, and they will not do good in direct sunlight. So as you can see, I have them in my slider. They're getting a fair amount of sunlight right now, winter sun. It's not hot when I go over there. In the summertime, I have a lot of trees and it will get dappled sun, which is fine. If you have them in direct sunlight without an overhang, it gets hot in the window, it can burn the leaves and it can burn the flowers. So you don't want to put them in direct hot sunlight. You'll see brown or yellow spots, and that will be burning from too much sunlight. This seems to be perfect, and I've always kept them in a sunny window and had no issues with it. Now your watering is very, very important. I have a friend that likes to water her African violets from the bottom. I don't care for that method. I never cared for watering my plants from the bottom. I just don't like the idea of a wet root system of the bottom. I call it their feet being wet all the time. I like to water from the top, and that way I can feel the soil also, how moist it is. I don't feel that you can get a good gauge from when you water from the bottom. So they like tepid water, not cold water, not hot water, tepid water. And you don't want to water their leaves or their flowers, especially if you have cold water and you water their leaves and some cold water gets on, it will speckle and spot their leaves. So what I use is this watering can. I really like it a lot because it's got this very thin, narrow spout, and I can get right into the soil without hitting the leaves or the flowers. They also need to be fertilized about every 2 weeks when they're blooming. And I fertilize them about every month when they're not blooming. And I really like the Miracle Grow can you see that? For African violets. It's a liquid, and it's always worked well for me for the last 10 or 12 years. Follow the directions on the back. Just put it in your water. And like I said, about every 2 weeks while they're blooming and about every month when they're not blooming. So that's the fertilizing that they need. I've heard that they are prone to aphids and some other kind of pests, but I've never had an issue with them indoors. If you notice little white aphids, little white bugs underneath on your leaves, go to your local gardening center and ask them what you can use to put on that. I've never had an issue, but they can be prone to that, I've heard. Probably down south where it's, or if you have doors or windows open, or another plant that's next to it that has that, it can transfer over. So you can ask your local garden center for an insecticide for that. If you're overwatering them, getting the amount of water is really key. You don't want them wet and you don't want it dry, the water, to water them. Their soil needs to be just perfect. And I find that's really easy to do by touch. If you get them too wet, you'll notice around the bottom, the leaves will start to droop and hang over the pot. And that's very common. When you start to see these droopy, discolored leaves hanging over the pot, you know that you've overwatered your African violet. So let's go on over and take a better look at the African violets, and I'll show you some more. All right, we had some weather, and it's a beautiful day today, so my plants are happy getting their sunlight. I do switch them around so that they'll get sun in different spots of their leaves from time to time. And you'll see that they're very healthy. You see how the leaves don't have any spots. They're very green. They're not droopy. Now there's two kinds of African violets. This type, the flower has a smooth edge around it. Some of them are lacy. The lacy ones tend to bloom sometimes all year round. These particular African violets bloom for about 1.5 to 2 months for me, and then they'll go dormant for a couple months. So I'll get 2 to 3 blooms out of these a year, and like I said, they'll usually bloom for 1.5 to 2 months. This one is particularly beautiful. The violet, look at how beautiful these leaves are. The issue with this violet is that it does have it's starting to get a bit of root rot. I can feel it. Now, that could be from overwatering, but another must do with these is they must be repotted. Unlike other houseplants, they must be repotted every year. Yes, I said they need to be repotted every year. If they don't get repotted every year, they can get this root rot. So as soon as they're done blooming, I will repot both of these. And honestly, both of these have only been repotted once in the last 10 years. So that's why this is happening. Now, I can show you, this is where I put the water. In here, I put the water back in here. I don't sprinkle the water on and get it on any of the flowers or any of the leaves. Like I said before, they don't like to have water on their leaves. So you water directly in the soil. Now you put your finger in here and it feels damp. It's not wet, it's not dry. It's uniformly moist. And you can tell by taking your finger, you could see it's not sticking on my finger, the soil isn't sticking on it, so it's not super wet and muddy. But some did that I had to brush off, and that means it's not too dry. So it's perfectly watered. Now, I don't like water around the bottom saucer. Of course, when you water it, the water is going to come down and go into your bottom saucer, and it's going to eventually, after an hour or so, go back up into the plant. But if you're noticing that when you water it and it spills over into this, your second protective spot down here, and this is not good if it goes in here. If it stays in this saucer and it stays longer than an hour or so, you've overwatered it. You don't want your feet to get wet here. So you water it, it should come down, you'll see some water. Try not to get it to where it overflows into the second saucer, and make sure that when you see it in here, it evaporates and goes back up, not evaporates, but goes back up into the saucer, so that after an hour or so, this is again dry to the touch. And this is just uniformly moist the next day. It'll be wet the first day, but uniformly moist like this. And that's a perfect water. Aren't they pretty? All right, so we can see that these have been blooming for a few weeks now, and we've got some flowers that are already getting dried out. And what you do is you just take them and pinch them off with your fingernails and throw them out. You want to pinch them off with your fingernails. You don't ever want to pull. If you pull, you can pull off the whole flower. If you took one of these and pulled it off, this whole thing could come off and you will damage your plant. So always snip it with your fingernail to take it off and throw it away then. And it will look nice. See, pinch. These are getting old. Pinch it with your fingernail. Don't pull. I don't have any leaves that are droopy and discolored, but if I had some droopy, discolored leaves, I would take those droopy, discolored leaves and I would pinch them also. Say this one was droopy and it was limp and it would just be discolored, and you could just pinch that off. Don't pull it, pinch that off also. See how these are not droopy. They're all healthy. And again, like I said, if they start to get droopy on the side, they'll droop right down. You'll see they'll just flop down your leaves and you're overwatering it. So that's pretty easy. I'm just going to throw these out and set you guys back up. There's really not much to it. I mean, it's basics. The only thing that is a little different from any other houseplant would be the fact that they do like to be repotted every year so that they don't get root rot. And you don't need to do that with other indoor plants. Humidity. you're going to want that anyway for yourself. Just don't put them in any room below 60 degrees. Be careful of the watering. I think I showed you pretty much on how to judge by my finger. It's pretty accurate. And after a while, you get the feel for it. So I hope that's helped you. Go out and buy yourself an African violet and try it. Do everything I said, and you should have happy, beautiful African violets. And I know when people come in and see my violets, they're amazed. They always say, "Oh, I can't grow African violets. They're so beautiful. You have a green thumb. How do you grow them?" It's not hard. It's not hard. You just have to know those basic do's and don'ts, and you'll have beautiful African violets too. And I need to open that curtain up again because they love that sun. And if you noticed, they were getting a good amount of sun, but it wasn't hot when I put my hand there. It wasn't burning hot sun. And even in the summertime, you don't want it burning hot because that will damage your plant. So I hope this has helped. And if you have any questions and I can help you, write in the comments below. And if you have some beautiful African violets or any other tips, I'd also love to hear that. So have a great day, everyone. Hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.